Hi everyone, welcome to another video. This is Mr. Chow from EnglishTuition.org. Now in today's video, we are going to focus on the O-Levels personal recount. So if you want to do well, find out the number one reason why students are getting stuck at a lower grade, and hopefully we can help you to overcome that. So let's get started, alright? So what's the number one reason, right? If you find yourself getting stuck with a B grade or a C grade, and I think the number one reason why you're not scoring is that you're too focused on the word count, right? So you're always thinking about what to write. Do I have any ideas for this question? And the moment you read the 4 questions and you find one that you feel that you have content, and that's it, right? You pinpoint that particular essay question and you just immediately begin to write on that question. So that's a mistake, right? So you're concerned with the question, can I meet the word count, right? So what is the end result if you do that? Well, if you do that, the essay is going to be filled with 3 types of content. Number 1, there's little substance. So the substance is about developing the story, it's about telling the story, and you need to give certain specifics or details using the vocab that you have in order to tell the story in a very lively and vivid manner. So, but if you cannot do that, then your story has got little substance. So what do you fill the story with? So you're going to fill the story with what we call fillers, right? So this is just additional text that has less relevance, and they are just there for the word count, okay? They are not really important, right? And then the third type of content that students tend to have, which I find to be true as well, is that when those students run out of ideas, they just use repetitive content. That means they're repeating the same ideas over and over again. So 3 ideas and 2 out of 3 are not really important content, right? So therefore your essay score is going to suffer, right? So some students think that, yeah, I have 800 words, right? And have this expectation that, they have put in a lot of effort, 600 words, 700 words, 800 words, and they go, yeah, right, I'm going to do well for my essay, right? And then they get disappointed when they receive the essay back from their teachers and they see, well, it's a C grade again. And they feel very discouraged, right? Because after all, they have put in a lot of effort, but they do not understand why they have not scored the grade that they think they deserve, right? Based on effort, right? So it's not just about effort, it's not just about quantity, all right? So let me show you what I mean, all right? So what is your goal? Now your goal, of course, is to reduce the fillers and as well as the repetitive content so that you can build up the substance, the important stuff in your essay, all right? So replace all those fillers, all those repeat content, repeat words, phrases, etc. with substance. And this works for all essay type. Now I know this video will focus on personal recount. The example that I'm going to give you is also focused on the personal recount, but this also works for discursive and argumentative as well, right? So you're writing discursive essays and you want to do PU and you're giving examples, but you're using filler, right? You're using repetitive examples, so that's not good. So that's the general principle you want to keep in mind, okay? So let's see how this plays out on an actual personal recount. We're just going to go through one paragraph. So here's an example of a week recount. Last Saturday, I woke up early in the morning and it was a very bright and sunny day, which made me feel very happy and excited. I was feeling very excited because it was a special day and also because it was not an ordinary day. So it felt very different from normal days. I got out of bed and went to brush my teeth and wash my face, and after that I went to eat my breakfast, which was very delicious and very nice. After eating, I felt very full and very satisfied, and I was feeling very happy inside. Then I went out of the house to meet my friends, and we were all very excited and happy to see each other, and everyone was smiling and talking a lot. It was a very fun and enjoyable day that I will always remember in my heart forever. Okay, so you can see that I'm amused when I'm reading this particular paragraph, because you can see that there's a lot of filler, there's a lot of repetitive words, content, and even sentence structure. So I think you can tell just from the writing alone that this is not going to cut it for the O-levels. PSLE students, if you do this, Yes, maybe you will still get a somewhat above average grade, still not the best grade, okay, but that's for primary school. So if you're taking this at O levels, right, and you're writing in this fashion, in this particular manner, then don't expect to get an A or even a B, all right, and you're lucky to get a pass because you might make certain mistakes, punctuation errors, tenses, grammatical errors, and so on and so forth. So that will bring down your grade even more. Okay, so this is not what you want to do during the O levels or even the N levels. All right. So let's take a look at how we should be doing it. Right, this is an example of a strong recount. Last Saturday, I overslept and sprinted out of my flat with my shoelaces untied, only to see the bus pulling away from the stop. I stood there, breathless and frustrated, and watching it disappear around the corner. A taxi driver slowed down and gestured for me to get in. As we drove through quiet streets washed in pale morning light, my panic slowly gave way to relief. When I finally reached school just in time for assembly, my hands were still shaking, but I knew I would remember that morning for the unexpected kindness of a stranger rather than the chaos I had caused myself. So how do you feel about this particular paragraph? Definitely you will say good, right? So, but how is it good? Okay, so you can see that certain words are being used. The movement words are different. Good words are being used over the paragraph. Gestured, right? Watching it disappear around the corner, washed in pale morning light, that's a good phrase. And you also see that there are use of emotional words, right? Panic slowly gave way to relief. Okay, so it sounds more natural and more organic. It's like there's a real person within the story itself. And compared to the previous paragraph, it's just kind of listing what happened, right? As in 1, what happened, 2, what happened, 3, what happened, and then the same words, the same sentence structures get repeated over and over again. But you don't get that feeling for this particular paragraph. So hopefully you can give a paragraph that resembles something like this. Focus on emotion words. Always think about what new words or phrases that you can use to show the examiner that, hey, you have done your work, you have done your reading, you have done your language building, and therefore you can use good words, good phrases at the right time, right? Given the right context, then you have a very good chance of scoring A. So in terms of word count, both paragraphs are roughly about the same word count, okay? But the second paragraph in this strong recount is very obvious that the quality is much better compared to the first paragraph. All right, so focus and emphasize a little bit more on quality rather than I want to write 600 words, 800 words, 1000 words. All right, that's not going to get you where you want to go. Okay, next, the text on this particular slide might be a little bit small because there's a lot of techniques that we want to cover. So hopefully you're watching this on a laptop or a desktop or even a TV so that you can see, right? If not, you're watching on your phone, hopefully you can hear me very clearly. So the first column here, we are talking about some common fillers, right? Or repetitive content, right? And there's some example. But we want to know what is the replacement technique, right? So instead of doing what you usually do, what technique can we use to replace that vocabulary, right? For example, a lot of students like to use very plus adjective, right? And the adjective is relatively simple, and they use adjectives like sad, happy, tired, right? These are adjectives you learn in primary school, all right? So instead of doing that, use more precise vocabulary like elated, devastated, exhausted, right? All those words are better than happy and sad, okay? So that's the first technique. The second filler is that students sometimes tend to repeat emotions, and they're happy, and then they're happy again, and then they're happy a third time, right? So what should you do instead of that? So you want to show, instead of just using the word, right? Maybe you can do a description of the body language, right? My hands trembled as I smiled, right? So the body language shows that you're happy and you don't have to actually have to use that word. Sometimes you see this in comprehension as well, right? They don't tell you that the character is happy or sad, but instead they describe the behavior, they describe the body language, and you can use this technique in your own personal recount as well. Okay, now the third technique is empty intensifiers, right? Intensifiers means you're trying to increase the strength of the word, right? And they only use like words that are repetitive, like really, so, extremely, right? Or my primary school students like to use the word super, right? Super happy. Okay. So what you want to do is again replace with imagery or action. My voice dropped to a whisper, and this suggests weakness, right? Now the fourth filler that students like to use is that they use generic positives, right? Generic means they are so general that they are used too often, right? Like nice, good, fun, great. Okay, so what you can do is to use sensory detail instead of using something that is so generic, all right, that it applies to all context. The air smelled of rain and petrol. Okay, so this is a somewhat neutral mood, all right, but you just let the reader do his or her own interpretation. So you don't use the generic positive, instead you just use the sensory detail. Okay, and the next common filler is routine sequences, right? Now this is very common when I mark the work of my students as well, right? So because when you first learn writing, the very first technique that we learn is the sequence of events, and some students just stop there, right? So they learn the sequence, first, second, third, fourth, etc., etc., and then they stop. So for example, the character woke up, brushed teeth, ate breakfast, etc. Is very boring if you write in this manner. Okay, so you might want to start at the conflict or the action because that's where the hook is. So begin with the problem or event instead of just focusing on a lot of trivial, unimportant things, right? Just so that you can set the sequence. Okay, so that's part of your writing skill as well. The next filler, repetitive sentence starters, right? These are students who start the sentence the same way all the time. I went, I went, I went, I go, I go, I go. Okay, so what you want to do is to vary the sentence structure, and in this particular example you see all the subject verbs, they are the same. So you might want to use different clauses, participles, or even different connectors. Now personally, I teach my students to use different connectors. They always start with some basic connectors, then they move on to advanced connectors to avoid this specific problem. Okay, they form sentences every week, they write every week, and I will go through their work, and if I find that they repeat the same sentence structures all the time, no, I'll ask them to repeat and redo, and I will specifically tell them, right, these are the connectors that you want to use. All right, circular explanations. Oh, a lot of students are guilty of this as well. Because it was special and not normal, right? It was special, not normal, they actually mean the same thing, that's why it's circular. Okay, so what you want to do is to cut away, remove the redundancy, and just give one reason only, right? So you just put a full stop here, and all these don't want. Okay, the next filler, emotional labels. I was scared, right? And then you don't know how to paraphrase, you only know scared. Okay, so replace with a physical response. My stomach tightened. So this is similar to the body language that we talked about here, right? They are similar. Okay, and then next we have time fillers, right? Time fillers, and then after that. So what you want to do is maybe compress the time and use the transitions sparingly, or just change it up. So instead of and then the next moment, soon, the next day, a week later, hardly, right? So there are even connectors that you can use, all right, for time connectors to change up your sentence structure. Next, summary phrases. Okay, it was unforgettable, right? This one you learn in primary school. Okay, so maybe you want to pick up, a more impactful way to sum up your story, to show the significance, right? And never looked at strangers the same way again. And this is better than unforgettable, right? So I highly encourage students to come up with your own original sentences. You need to look so that you don't always use the same words and phrases that everybody else is using. It was an unforgettable day. That every PSLE student learned that, and then they bring it forward to secondary school, and then O levels we see this again. Okay, that is not a good thing. So you want to change it up. All right. Okay. Next, vague descriptions. Right. Something happened, so this is something that you should never do. Right. Anything generic, anything vague, right, is usually not so good, because then you're not being very clear with the message that you're trying to send, right? So as a language student, you always want to be as specific as possible, right? Specify the events. The glass shattered across the floor, right? So this is very clear, very specific. People know what's happening instead of just something happened, right? And finally, prevent over-explaining, right? For example, I felt sad because I was unhappy, right? You're trying to get the message across, and as a result, you repeat too often, right? So the technique, of course, is to remove the duplication and only keep one clear emotion. Now, I would like to add an exception here, okay? Not all repetition is bad, all right? And the reason is because sometimes when you want to emphasize on a message that is very of importance, right? A significant message, it is worthwhile to repeat something that is important. But the way to do this is not to use the same words, right? You need to find another way. Maybe paraphrase, maybe give an example, but you are repeating the same message, okay? So, but this is the only exception, right? So don't do this for everything, okay? If you do it for everything, then what are you trying to emphasize? Nothing, right? So don't do it for everything. Only emphasize, like maybe in the climax, the most important event or incident that happened, and you give it 2 to 3 different sentences instead of one. All right, so that is the only exception, and you want to emphasize importance. Okay, so with that said, there's a lot of techniques that we just covered. Let's quickly move on. I have some final tips for you. All right, now your mindset, always think, what is a different word or a different phrase or a different sentence structure? Now, ideally, every time you start a sentence, it should be a different sentence structure. You have A, B, C, and then maybe you want to go back to A again, maybe you want to go back to B again, and then B, C, C again, A. So there's always variety. What you don't want is A, B, 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 B. Then everything will sound really repetitive. Now you have other knowledge that you want to demonstrate to the examiner, but you are not showing it, so the examiner thinks, well, is this student just a one-trick pony, right? That's the only sentence structure he knows. That's the only word, the happy, sad word. That's the only adjective he knows, right? But you argue, you say, no, I know a lot of words, but you are not showing it. Okay, you need to show it in your essay. All right. Now, the word count is important. I'm not saying it's not important. Okay, but know that and remember that it's not just about the word count. Okay, it's also about the substance. Right. Your essay needs to have a lot of substance and not just a lot of words that say a whole lot of nothing. Okay, so demonstrate the substance and you're more than likely, right, to score an A. That's the best secret that I can give you. All right, so I hope you learned something from this video. If you are serious about learning English from me for exam purposes, right, just you don't have to find me, right, my website. I'm going to put up the next video for the O-level students who wish to improve on their grade. Okay, so just go on and click on the next video, and I will see you there.